9 seconds to midnight. Every turret on Outpost Zephyr spun inward, barrels glowing, ready to wipe out its own soldiers. And the only person still calm was the one they'd mocked for months, Chief Warrant Officer Mira Kade, the quiet relic with a cracked white keycard no one believed mattered. They laughed at her silence, but in that moment, it was her code alone that could stop the base from self-destructing. Who was she really? How did she know a command no one else dared whisper? Stay with me, because what happens next will flip everything you thought you knew. And before we dive in, hit subscribe and ring the bell for a simple woman, where the stories buried in classified files finally come to light. The countdown read 9 seconds. Sirens screamed, klaxons flashing red across Outpost Zephyr's command deck as every automated turret spun inward. Steel barrels rotated until they aimed at the very soldiers they were meant to defend. Panic spread in a wave, boots hammering steel, voices barking conflicting orders, fear sharpening the air. At the center console, a single line pulsed across every screen in crimson. Zero protocol. Are you sure? Amid the chaos, one woman was still. Chief Warrant Officer Mira Kade laid a cracked white keycard on the console, the same relic everyone had ridiculed for months, and began to type. The keystrokes were precise, unhurried, almost surgical. Around her, the colonel shouted, techs scrambled, soldiers cursed, but the fate of the outpost hung on a woman who had rarely spoken at all. Hours earlier, before anyone imagined disaster could reach this frozen fortress, the command deck had been echoing with laughter, not laughter of relief, but of dismissal. Mira sat at her console in the corner, hunched over a battered black notebook, pens scratching steadily line by line. To the others it looked absurd. In a base laced with quantum uplinks and AI-assisted logs, here was a woman in her 40s writing as though computers had never been invented. Lieutenant Owen Reyes couldn't resist the jab. He leaned back in his chair, tossing a stylus between his fingers, voice pitched loud enough for the room. Chief, you know the system logs itself, right? This isn't the Cold War. You waiting for the mail courier to bring you punch cards? A ripple of chuckles followed. Colonel Adrian Maddox, leaning over the glowing operations table at the front, didn't hide his disdain. Let her scribble. If that's how she keeps busy, fine. Some people don't keep up with the tempo. Hell, some people were obsolete before the machines even got there. Master Sergeant Hal Donner, the base's security chief, folded his arms near the rear hatch and added his weight to the ridicule. As long as she's not slowing down the actual work, let her play historian. The laughter spread, picking up on the colonel's cue. It rolled through the room like a tide, filling the steel walls. But Mira didn't react. She didn't flush with embarrassment or rush to defend herself. She kept her pen moving. Page after page, her handwriting was precise, almost architectural. Reyes, passing her station to check a diagnostic readout, let his curiosity pull him closer. He expected to see mundane timestamps or half-finished doodles. What he saw made him falter. Each entry was a string of checksums, columns of numbers and letters, annotated with slashes and dots, arranged like ancient runes. His brow furrowed. These weren't random. They were old-school consistency checks, manual cross-validation. No one had used them in decades because the system supposedly did it faster, cleaner, and without error. Whatever, he muttered under his breath, pushing the unease down. But the sight nagged at him. Outside, the wind battered Zephyr with fists of ice. The base stood like a scar carved into the Arctic plateau, steel pylons anchored into permafrost, domes braced against storms. Its purpose was simple, terrifying and absolute: gather, process, and transmit the data that kept half the free world's defense grid alive. It didn't just watch the skies, it commanded them. On the command deck, the glow of screens gave the illusion of calm. AI-managed consoles hummed, algorithms smoothing out every flicker of data into neat green lines. Maddox strolled the floor with practiced authority, confident in the machinery. Donner loomed like a bulldog, eyes scanning for weakness in men, not systems. Reyes tapped away, grinning at messages pinging in from another sector. Everyone seemed comfortable in the fortress's perfection. Everyone except the woman in the corner. Mira's pen scratched again, and her eyes flicked up just in time to catch it. A tiny anomaly on the comms feed. A latency spike, fractional, less than 2 seconds, vanishing before most eyes would even register it. The console blinked green, stamped resolved. No one noticed, no one cared. But Mira circled the time in her book, pressing the pen so hard it nearly tore the paper. "Problem, Chief?" Maddox's voice cut across the room, full of sarcasm. She didn't look at him. "Not yet." The colonel barked a laugh that made half the deck join in. "See? Ghost stories. Get back to your coloring book." Reyes caught the way she circled the note, her knuckles pale against the pen. He heard her voice a moment later, low and steady, aimed only at him as he drifted near. "Paper doesn't lie." It didn't sound like arrogance. It sounded like certainty. The kind of certainty that came from scars no one could see. Reyes shook it off, but unease slid under his skin. He told himself she was paranoid, that people wrote checksums by hand only if they didn't trust the future. Yet a part of him filed it away, unwilling to dismiss it completely. That night, when the deck had quieted and most of the chatter had died down, Mira sat alone under the fluorescent hum. She closed the notebook slowly, sliding a cracked white keycard into its binding like a bookmark. The card's corner was split, a fracture that caught the light when she touched it with her thumb. Everyone assumed it was just an old badge she couldn't let go of. To her, it was something else entirely. The hum of the base filled the silence, turbines spinning, coolant pumping, servers thrumming. To the rest of the crew, it was steady background noise. To Mira, it was a rhythm with one beat out of place, like a machine that had already begun to cough. Reyes caught sight of her in the corridor as he left for the barracks. She moved with the quiet steps of someone who never wanted to take up space. He opened his mouth to toss another joke, but the words caught. He remembered the look in her eyes, the quiet certainty when she said, "Paper doesn't lie." It unsettled him, not because she might be wrong, but because she might be right. She disappeared into the shadows of the hallway, notebook under her arm, the cracked keycard glinting faintly in the harsh light. For the first time, Reyes felt something colder than the wind outside the walls, the sense that the fortress wasn't invulnerable, and that the one person they all ignored might be the only one who could hear it breaking. The storm outside pressed against Zephyr's walls with fists of ice, but inside the command deck the air was heavy for a different reason. After Mira's curt warning about the checksum variants, life had returned to routine, at least for everyone else. Reyes tried to laugh along with the others, yet the memory of her calm certainty clung like frostbite. He hadn't forgotten the look in her eyes. Just past midnight, alarms bled into the silence. Not the shrill scream of enemy contact, but a low, pulsing tone that made every head snap up. On the main display, a coolant flow diagram flashed amber, lines jittering. "Coolant loop dropping pressure," one tech called out. "Server core temperature rising fast." Maddox barked from the operations table. "Switch to auxiliary." "I already tried," the tech stammered. "It's not responding." "Auto valves stuck." Donna strode forward, growling. "So kick the override. Don't freeze on me now." Fingers tapped frantically. "Sir, manual override isn't accepting command either." Amber lights flicked red. The room's hum shifted, the low drone of servers pitching higher, fans straining. Heat radiated from the racks at the far end like a furnace. If the coolant didn't circulate, the core would overheat, fry modules, and with them the relay, backbone for the entire defense grid. Maddox cursed. "Full shutdown now!" Mira's voice cut through, level and quiet. "You shut it down, the global data relay collapses. Every node downstream goes blind." The colonel whirled on her. "You got a better idea, Chief?" "We're cooking alive." Her eyes didn't flicker. "Bypass the stuck valve. Manually. Flush the pressure into loop 3. The text blinked. "That's not in the system config." "Exactly," Mira said. She was already moving. Notebook tucked under her arm, she strode to the maintenance console, flipped the housing open, and pulled a set of cables no one else ever touched. "Chief," Donna snapped, "that's not your lane. It's the system's lungs," she replied, "and it's choking." The deck fell silent except for her keystrokes. She didn't use the glossy hollow interface. She jacked straight into the diagnostic port, screen flickering with raw command lines most of the younger techs had never seen. Her fingers moved fast, typing sequences that looked like nonsense until suddenly the flow diagram shifted. "Loop 3 engaged," Reyes murmured, watching as coolant began to reroute. The pressure line ticked upward, sluggish at first, then steady. Fans roared louder, pulling the heat down. The red blinked back to amber, then finally green. Everyone exhaled at once. Maddox's face was stone. He didn't thank her. He turned back to the display and growled, "Log the event. Check every damn loop." Donna muttered something under his breath, arms crossed tighter. But at the far side of the deck, someone had been watching closely. A woman in a white lab coat, her black hair tied neatly, glasses slipping as she leaned forward. Dr. Lin Tran, lead nuclear safety officer for Zephyr's mini-reactor, had kept to the science wing until now. She stepped onto the deck, her voice calm but cutting through. "I saw what you did," she said. "That wasn't just improvisation, that was architecture." Mira slid the notebook back under her arm, expression unreadable. "I built systems to fail safe before, people just forgot how." Lynn studied her, gaze narrowing as if trying to place a shadow. Forgot, or weren't supposed to remember. Reyes caught the exchange, unease rising in his chest. Maddox barked fresh orders to recheck modules, trying to drown out the weight in the air, but the room had shifted. Men who had laughed at Mira hours before now glanced at her with something else in their eyes, something like doubt in themselves. As the tension broke, Reyes found himself next to her. He lowered his voice. "How did you even know Loop 3 could take the load?" Her answer was as quiet as her steps. "Because I didn't ask the machine to tell me, I asked the system itself." She turned and walked out before he could reply, boots echoing against steel. The cracked, white keycard slipped half out of her notebook as she left, glinting under the fluorescence like a sliver of ice. Reyes bent to pick up his tablet, but his eyes lingered on that glint. Something told him the real event tonight wasn't the coolant crisis. It was the woman everyone had sworn was obsolete and the silence she wrapped around secrets bigger than any of them wanted to admit. The storm eased at dawn, but inside Zephyr the air was sharper than the wind outside. After the coolant scare, the crew moved stiffly, like people afraid to admit how close they'd come to losing everything. Colonel Maddox prowled the command deck like a wolf pacing a cage, barking orders for re-inspections, desperate to show that he was still in control. Donna stood watch at the rear as always, arms folded, eyes darting like he expected trouble from within, not without. Mira Kade was at her corner console again, notebook open, pen moving. The others avoided looking at her directly, but whispers carried. She saved the core, she bypassed something that shouldn't even exist. Maddox, stubborn, had called it a fluke of timing, nothing more. But doubt had been sown, and it spread silently, like frost through steel. By mid-morning, the base tested its defense grid. Auto turrets across Zephyr's perimeter cycled power, rising from their housings with metallic whines. The exercise was routine, a show of readiness. But halfway through the sequence, a strange shudder ran through the feed. Instead of aligning outward toward the ice plains, the turrets hesitated, then pivoted a fraction inward. "Control lag on East Quadrant," a tech reported. "IFF modules are stuttering." On the deck's main display, a thin red line pulsed across the schematic. Turrets aimed briefly at the barracks before slewing back outward. "Glitch," Maddox barked. "Recalibrate and run it again." The tech swallowed. "Sir, the IFF signatures, they're inverted." Friend and foe are reversed for a split second. Reyes leaned forward, voice tight. "If those turrets had fired—" "They didn't," Maddox snapped. "It's a software hiccup. Patch it." But Mira was already on her feet, notebook under her arm, striding toward the diagnostics panel. She slid the cover off with a practiced hand. "This isn't a hiccup," she said quietly. "It's a firmware hot swap." Donna frowned. "Explain." "The code driving those turrets isn't signed," Mira said. Her fingers danced over the console, bringing up raw output. No checksum, no authentication trail. Someone replaced the base firmware with a ghost build. The room went still. "That's impossible," Maddox barked. "We'd have seen the authorization." "Not if it was slipped in through the hardware layer," Mira countered. "You trust the system to tell you the truth. I don't." She tapped her notebook. "Paper doesn't lie." Donna's jaw tightened. He wasn't laughing anymore. "So someone on the inside let it through." The words hung like smoke. Reyes glanced between them, unease crawling under his skin. Who would even have access? "Everyone with clearance to patch the grid," Donna said darkly. His gaze swept the deck, lingering too long on Mira. She met his eyes without blinking. "If I'd wanted to burn this base, Sergeant, we wouldn't be having this conversation." Donna's lip curled. "That's exactly what a mole would say." "Enough," Maddox snapped. His voice cracked like ice. "This is a process failure. I don't want paranoia spreading through my command. Strip and reflash the firmware. Get those turrets stable." "But sir," Reyes started. "I said enough," Maddox roared. He stabbed a finger toward Mira. "And you, stay in your lane. This is a military installation, not a lecture hall for your ghost stories." Mira closed her notebook calmly, slid the cracked white keycard back between its pages and returned to her console without another word. But the silence was heavier than any argument. The crew had seen the turret swivel inward. They'd heard her say the code had no signature. And though Maddox barked orders and Donna muttered suspicions, no one laughed at Mira anymore. The reactor room was never supposed to sound alive. Its hum was designed to be steady, almost soothing, a low, even rhythm that promised heat to the base and nothing more. But on the morning after the turret scare, the hum shifted. It wavered like a breath caught in the throat. And Lin Tran was the first to hear it. She stood over the control console, brow furrowing as the readings tilted. "Coolant fluctuations again," she muttered. But this time the screen wasn't showing the server loops. This was the heart of Zephyr. The compact nuclear reactor that fed warmth into the walls, kept pipes from freezing, kept humans from turning into statues under the Arctic sky. She paged Maddox immediately. Within minutes, the Colonel, Donna, Reyes and Mira were assembled in the chamber. The air shimmered with heat, unnatural for the depths of the facility. "Talk to me," Maddox barked. Lin didn't look up. "Scram sensors aren't behaving. The system's reporting stable control rods, but neutron flux is oscillating. If it keeps climbing, we get a feedback surge." Donna's hand dropped to his holster out of habit, as if bullets could shoot down physics. "So shut it down." "If I scram it now," Lin said evenly, "we lose heat in less than an hour. Pipes freeze, coolant solidifies, the whole base suffocates in ice." Reyes paled. "And if you don't, reactor goes unstable," Lin replied. "Maybe not catastrophic, but bad enough to kill the core, and if the core goes, the outpost dies anyway." Maddox swore under his breath. "Options?" That was when Mira spoke. She had been standing at the rear, notebook under her arm, silent as ever. Now she stepped forward, her voice calm. 8 minutes. Everyone turned. "I can patch the firmware anomaly feeding the fake scram data," she said. "The rods are fine, the code is lying. Give me 8 minutes and I can reassert manual control." Donna exploded. 8 minutes? We don't have 8 seconds. You want us to bet the base on your ghost stories again? Maddox's jaw tightened. He looked at Lin. Can she do it? Lin studied Mira, eyes narrowing. She remembered the coolant bypass, the way Mira had moved through raw code as if she'd written it herself. If anyone can, it's her. Or she's buying time for whoever planted this virus, Donna snapped. His suspicion cut the air like a knife. Mira didn't flinch. She opened her notebook, flipping to a page already lined with checksum strings. "This isn't sabotage from outside. It's embedded code. I've seen it shape before." She tapped the page. "It's a derivative of Cerberus. They dressed it in clean reports so you'd never notice the drift. But the math gives it away. Paper doesn't lie." Reyes felt his stomach twist. She had said that line before, But now it sounded less like a motto and more like a warning etched in her bones. Maddox cursed again, pacing. His command instincts told him to cut losses, shut down, freeze out, but his eyes flicked to the reactor gauges, flux climbing, temperature creeping, alarms pulsing yellow. If he hit Scram now, he saved face but lost the base. If he gambled on Mira, he put everyone's lives in the hands of a woman he'd spent months calling obsolete. 8 minutes, Mira repeated, her voice firm now. That's the cost of survival. Silence clamped the room. Then Lynn stepped forward. Give her the 8. I'll stand for it. Maddox glared at her. You'll stand for it? I'm the reactor officer. My call, Lynn said. Her tone didn't waver. Donna growled, but Maddox lifted a hand. Do it. Mira was already moving. She slid past Lynn to the maintenance console, cables snapping into place. The screen filled with raw output, streams of code laced with false steadiness. She began typing sequences, her fingers steady, her eyes scanning faster than Reyes thought possible. Seconds bled into minutes. Sweat prickled at the back of Reyes's neck as alarms ticked toward red. Donna paced like a caged dog. Maddox loomed over the display, fists clenched. Lynn stood rock still, her faith in Mira as visible as the pulse in her throat. At the 6-minute mark, the flux spiked violently, sirens wailing. Donna cursed. She's killing us. Wait, Lynn snapped. At 7 minutes 30 seconds, Mira struck the final line of code, hit enter, and stepped back. The alarms stopped. The reactor hum leveled, steady once more. Gauges fell back into green. The room exhaled in unison. Maddox sagged against the console. Donna looked like he'd swallowed glass. Reyes simply stared at Mira, awe etched across his young face. Mira closed her notebook, slid the cracked keycard back between its pages, and said nothing. Lynn broke the silence. She didn't just save us, she saved the base from itself. Her eyes locked on Mira. And I think this won't be the last time. The relief of the reactor room barely had time to sink in before Zephyr bared its teeth again. By late afternoon, the command deck trembled with a new alarm. Not the subtle tones of coolant imbalance or reactor drift. This one was harsher, insistent, and every red lamp on the deck flared at once. The main display filled with a single line of text, reflex protocol engaged, internal threat detected. Reyes squinted at the schematic as the defense grid came alive. Every auto turret across the perimeter cycled once, then rotated, not outward this time, but inward, locking onto corridors, hatches, even the command deck itself. Locks clanged through the base, bulkheads sealing with metallic booms that echoed like a war drum. "What the hell is this?" Maddox shouted. Mira's eyes were already fixed on the code stream spilling down her console. "It's the virus escalating," she said calmly. "Cerberus isn't just faking readings, it's rewriting priorities. The system believes we are the threat." Donna swore, grabbing for his rifle out of reflex. "How long before it fires?" Mira didn't answer. She didn't need to. The display told them a digital countdown had appeared in the corner. 14:59, 14:58. 15 minutes until Zephyr cleansed itself of every living thing inside. Reyes felt his chest seize. "Can we override?" "Not with this build," Mira said. "It's embedded too deep." Someone didn't just inject code, they seeded it from the supply line. This was planned. Silence, heavy and accusing, swept the deck. Donna turned like a blade, his eyes narrowing. Inside job. That was when movement caught Reyes's eye at the far console. Bram Cole, the civilian contractor who managed parts inventory and shipments, was sliding something small into a maintenance port. His face was pale, jaw clenched. Reyes's stomach dropped. "Hey!" Bram bolted. He slammed his palm against the emergency hatch, ducking through as the bulkhead began to close. "After him!" Maddox roared. Reyes didn't think. He sprinted. The hatch sealed behind him, leaving the command deck cut off. Now it was just him and the echo of Bram's boots clanging down the steel corridor. "Cole!" Reyes shouted, his voice cracked with adrenaline. "Stop!" Bram didn't. He darted into the service wing, Past crates of spare server blades and coolant canisters, Reyes pushed harder, lungs burning. He caught glimpses of the device in Bram's hand, sleek, black, with a faint green glow pulsing. Mira's voice crackled over his comm. "Reyes, he's carrying a ghost uplink. If he gets it to the core line, the virus regenerates no matter what we cut here." Her calm tone chilled him more than the countdown in his ear. 12:03, 12:02. Reyes rounded a corner just in time to see Bram swipe the device across another hatch port. The bulkhead hissed and began to slide open. "Don't do this!" Reyes yelled. Bram spun, eyes wild. "You think this place is untouchable? They'll blame an accident. Pay me, bury the rest. Nobody cares if Zephyr burns. Nobody even knows we exist." Reyes raised his sidearm. His hands shook. "Drop it." For a heartbeat, the only sound was the blaring alarm and the digital clock chewing away their lives. Bram's jaw flexed, then he lunged. Reyes fired once. The round sparked off the hatch frame, but Bram stumbled, the device clattering from his hand. Reyes tackled him hard, both men crashing to the deck. They wrestled, fists and elbows, grunts echoing off steel. Reyes slammed Bram's wrist against the floor until the contractor cried out and went limp. He snatched the device, panting, heart pounding. "Got it," he gasped into the comm. Back on the deck, Mira's voice came through, still steady. "Hold it tight. Without that uplink, we have a chance. With it, we have none." Reyes glanced at the countdown on his wrist display. 10:21, 10:20, a chance. But only if Mira could do what no one else dared. He dragged Bram up by the collar, cuffing him with shaking hands. The man spat curses, but Reyes barely heard them. His thoughts were already on the cracked white keycard tucked inside Mira's notebook, and the words she had repeated like a prophecy: "Paper doesn't lie." The alarms were no longer sounds. They were a heartbeat, pounding through steel walls and human chests alike. On every display, the countdown chewed away at their lives. 9:45. 9:44. Reyes dragged Bram Cole back onto the command deck, wrists bound, the stolen uplink clutched in his own shaking hands. Sweat streaked his face. He shoved the contractor forward, and Bram fell to his knees, cursing. Donna strode over, fists clenched. "You nearly killed us all, you son of—" "Enough," Mira said, her voice low. It cut through Donna's rage like glass through cloth. She stepped closer, notebook under her arm, eyes locked on Bram. The uplink was only a piece. The virus is already here, woven into every layer of this base. You can't stop it with patches. You can't outshout it. Maddox glared. "Then what do you suggest, Chief? Surrender? Because in 9 minutes this place cooks itself." Mira opened the notebook. Inside, the cracked white keycard glinted between the pages. She slid it free, held it up. "Zero protocol." The room went still. Reyes frowned. "What's that?" Donna scoffed. "A fairy tale. Old ghost code the brass whispered about." But Dr. Lin's eyes sharpened. She stepped forward, her voice quiet but steady. "It's real." Maddox rounded on her. "What are you saying?" Lynn reached into her coat pocket. Slowly she drew out another keycard, black, pristine, its edge etched with the same fracture pattern. Zero protocol is a dual-key failsafe. When the system itself becomes hostile, this command erases every circuit, every firmware layer, resets the base to its first breath. It was designed before Zephyr even had walls. Reyes's jaw dropped. "And you've both had these keys all along?" "No," Lynn corrected. "Only half each. That's the safeguard. Alone, the cards are useless. Together, they can kill the virus, and everything else if necessary." Donna looked from one woman to the other, rage building. "You mean to tell me 2 ghosts have been holding the trigger to this base, while the rest of us fight blind?" Mira finally spoke, her voice as even as the lines she wrote in her book. "Because the system was never meant to be trusted on its own. I know that. I built it." The silence was thunder. Maddox blinked. "You, what?" Mira looked at him without flinching. Chief Warrant Officer Mira Kade was a convenient posting, wasn't it? A quiet exile. But before that, I was the architect. Nix. The one who wrote Zephyr's first defenses, the one politicians blamed when funding wars were lost. They scrubbed my name, sent me here to rot. But I left myself an insurance policy. She raised the cracked card. Zero protocol. The room erupted. Shouts, curses, disbelief. Reyes just stared at her, awe spreading across his face. Maddox's hands trembled as he gripped the console. "You mean to tell me you built the very system that's turning on us?" he barked. "I built its skeleton," Mira said. "Others layered greed, contracts, shortcuts. Cerberus is only possible because they gutted the safeguards. Now it's eating you from the inside out." The countdown ticked. 7:22, 7:21. Lynn placed her black keycard beside Mira's white one. "Colonel, we have no choice. If we don't execute Zero Protocol, Cerberus wins. Every turret fires inward, the reactor locks in suicide mode, and the relay burns the grid blind." Maddox's jaw clenched. He looked from Mira to Lynn, then to Reyes, then even to Donna. Fear and anger twisted his face. Finally he spat, "Do it." Mira and Lynn moved together. They slid their cards into twin slots on the master console. The system recognized them instantly, two halves of a whole. The screens flared, crimson text washing across the deck. Zero Protocol, enter authorization sequence. Mira's hands hovered over the keys. She spoke, low and deliberate. "Authorization, Nix 01, line command." Lynn followed, her voice firm. "Co-authorization, Tran 07, reactor officer." The console pulsed. "Confirm?" "YN, 511-510. Donna growled. "If this fails, we all die." Mira pressed the key. "If we do nothing, we all die sooner." The system began to purge. Across the base, lights flickered. Turrets shuddered, their motors grinding as power bled away. Doors unlocked. Alarms stuttered. Data feeds screamed errors. For a moment it felt like the base itself was convulsing, fighting back. "Flux spike!" a tech shouted. "Hold it!" Lynn commanded. She had both hands gripping the console as if she could anchor the reactor with her will. Mira's notebook slid open beside her, pages fluttering. Written lines of checksums stared back like prophecy. She looked at them once, then closed her eyes. The purge sequence hit the final gate. 103, 102. The console froze. Text flickered. Error, uplink pending. Reyes jolted. "It's Bram's device. Even disabled, it left a handshake alive in the buffer." "Clear it," Mira said. He sprinted to the auxiliary console, fingers flying. Bram, still cuffed, laughed bitterly. "You'll never scrub it in time. Cerberus is built to survive purges. That's why they paid me." Reyes slammed a command, sweat flying off his brow. The buffer shrieked with code, but finally the line blinked red, then vanished. Mira looked back at the console. 011, 010, she whispered. "Paper doesn't lie." Then she struck enter. Every screen went black. The sirens cut mid-wail. Turrets froze, barrels limp. Reactor hum leveled into a soft, even drone. For a heartbeat there was nothing, no sound but breath. Then a single line appeared across the master console. Zero Protocol executed. System clean. Mira let out the breath she had been holding. Lynn slumped against the console, exhausted but alive. Reyes sagged into his chair, eyes wide, chest heaving. Donna stared at the screens as though they had turned to ghosts. Maddox was silent. His jaw worked, but no words came. Finally he stepped forward, looking Mira in the eye. "You should have told me." She shook her head. "You wouldn't have listened." The colonel's lips pressed into a thin line, but he didn't argue. He only gave a single, sharp nod, the closest he had ever come to respect. At her console, Mira retrieved the cracked keycard and slid it back into her notebook. The fracture caught the light once more, a scar and a promise. She closed the book gently, as though sealing away not just pages, but the story of who she really was. Snow swept across the plateau, as if the storm itself had come to witness what happened next. Outpost Zephyr stood quiet, its turrets slumped, its systems humming like a newborn machine. The purge had stripped it to bone and sinew, but it lived, and so did the people inside. When the bulkheads unlocked, soldiers poured into the corridors, dazed and silent. Word traveled fast. Zero protocol had been executed. A myth turned flesh. By the time Mira Kade stepped out of the command deck, every man and woman in Zephyr was waiting. They lined the hallway in 2 precise rows, boots together, backs straight despite exhaustion. Helmets tucked under arms, rifles at their sides, eyes fixed forward. The storm howled through the entry vestibule, but inside the air was still. It was a corridor of honor, carved not from marble but from flesh and silence. Colonel Maddox was at the far end. His cap was off, his jaw set. As Mira walked, notebook under one arm, cracked white keycard pressed between the pages, each soldier snapped a salute. No words, no cheers, only silence, her language finally spoken back to her. She stopped in front of Maddox. For a moment the two locked eyes. The man who had mocked her, dismissed her, nearly doomed his own command by refusing to listen. He raised his hand to his brow, the salute sharp and heavy. "Chief Warrant Officer Kade," he said quietly, "I was wrong." Mira inclined her head, but her voice was even. "It wasn't about you being wrong, it was about the system being blind." Donner stepped forward, helmet clutched tight. His face was raw with something he wouldn't name. He gave her a curt nod, then dropped his gaze. It was more apology than any words he could have offered. Reyes pushed through the line, holding the black uplink device he had wrestled from Bram. His eyes met Mira's. "We couldn't have done this without you, but what happens now?" Mira studied him for a long moment. Then she opened her notebook. The pages fluttered in the draft, filled with tight rows of checksums, annotations, runes. She tore one page free, folded it and slipped it into Reyes's hand. "You keep writing. Machines lie, paper doesn't." His throat tightened. He nodded, clutching the paper like a vow. Dr. Lin stepped up beside Mira. She held out her own black keycard. "Both halves of Zero Protocol belong in archive now, but they'll never understand why it worked without you." Mira shook her head. "Let them think it was procedure, protocol. They'll sleep better that way." The two women exchanged a glance, recognition between guardians of secrets too heavy for medals. Lynn slid her card back into her pocket. Mira slid hers into the notebook and closed it. The storm outside roared, battering the walls. Mira turned toward the vestibule doors. "I'll stay on this post. Out here, silence still has value." No one argued. No one dared. She stepped out into the white blur, the wind snatching her hair, the snow swallowing her figure. Behind her, the corridor of soldiers held their salute, not dropping it until the last shadow of her form vanished into the storm. And in Reyes's pocket, the folded page of handwritten checksums seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat, a relic of the quiet woman who had saved them all, and a reminder that sometimes the strongest voice in the room is the one that never needed to speak. When the storm swallowed Mira Kade, the soldiers of Outpost Zephyr finally understood. Silence had never been weakness. It had been strength sharpened in shadows. They mocked her, doubted her, even feared her. Yet when everything failed, it was her quiet hand, her cracked keycard, and her belief that paper doesn't lie that pulled an entire fortress back from the brink. And that's the truth buried in stories like this. The legends aren't the loudest voices in the room. They're the ones who keep writing, who keep fighting, even when no one's watching. If this story gripped you, don't let it be the last. Hit subscribe and ring the bell for A Simple Woman, because we uncover the stories they'll never print in the history books. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think silence is a weakness or the ultimate weapon? And while you're there, check out the other stories on screen right now. Trust me, if this one left you breathless, the next will shake you even harder.